Hello and welcome to the Outdoor Recreation Council of BC's webinar. My name is Ryan Stewart and I'll be your host today. I'm going to give folks a couple minutes just to get logged into the webinar, and while they do that, I invite you to jump into the chat and let me know who's out there. Share your name, your location. If you're affiliated with an organization, tell me about that. And I'm just super curious to hear how you're using. Today's topic is about AllTrails. I'd love to hear how you're using the app and what you're hoping to learn today. I'll pop that into the chat. So anybody joining that's wondering what we're talking about, that's what we are talking about. When you do put it in the chat, please address it to everybody. It's just in the little drop-down menu there where next to the two. And yeah, we can see, everybody can see who's logging in and sharing. For me, I live in the Comox Valley on Vancouver Island. I work with the ORCBC, writing blog posts and producing webinars. I use AllTrails all the time, especially when I'm traveling to find hikes or trail runs or things like that that I want to do or check out locally. And I'm really excited about today's webinar because this was actually originally supposed to be a session during the ORCBC's conference back in May in Kamloops, and AllTrails was unfortunately not able to attend. And so I'm glad that we're able to have this webinar instead. It's a slightly different format, but hopefully just as valuable for folks. And I think the program that they're going to be talking about today is a really valuable one for our community. And I'm really excited to see what people are able to do with the public lands program going forward. All right, so yeah, I invite you to jump into the chat there and add your name, your location, any organization you're with. And yeah, just love to hear who's out there. And with that, I think I will start up sharing my screen and we'll get going. Okay. Well, hello again. My name is Ryan Stewart and I work on community engagement with the Outdoor Recreation Council of BC. This includes organizing and hosting our webinars. Today's topic is how to leverage AllTrails data for better trail stewardship. John Ribes was going to be our guest today, and it actually still looks like it is him there up on his Zoom screen, but it's actually Pitt Grewe. He's taken his place. John wasn't able to join us. Pitt is the head of social and environmental impact at AllTrails. Before I hand things over to Pitt, I have a little bit of housekeeping to do. So just bear with me for a second. Here's today's agenda. I'll provide a short introduction and then hand things over to Pitt. After his presentations, we'll have a dedicated question and answer session. If you have any questions during the webinar, please pop them into the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen there. We'll do our best to get to all of them after Pitt's presentation. I'll apologize in advance if we don't get to all of them, if we run out of time. We'll wrap things up around 1 p.m. Pacific time, and immediately following the webinar is a super short survey. Please stick around to fill it out. It really does help us with feedback on the webinar, what we can do better, topics you'd like us to cover, things like that. We are recording today's webinar, and we'll follow up later this week by email with a recording and a link to the recording and takeaways, resources, things like that that are covered during today's webinar. This webinar is part of a monthly series hosted by the Outdoor Recreation Council of BC. The ORCBC represents more than 100 nonprofit organizations. There are snowmobilers and hunters, climbers and hikers, conservation groups, mountain bike clubs. It's a very diverse group. The ORCBC is the only provincial organization that represents all the millions of British Columbians who like to recreate outdoors in nature. We do this in many ways, including advocacy, capacity building, funding, events, and education like this webinar. As a nonprofit, we rely on outside funding sources, including donations from people like you. All donations are tax deductible and eligible for a tax receipt. You can find out more at orcbc.ca. I would also like to acknowledge that I feel privileged to live, work, and recreate on the ancestral territory of the Comox First Nation. They looked after the lands and waters for millennia, and I am grateful for their efforts. Let's get on to today's webinar. As I mentioned earlier, we have Pitt Grewe with us today. Pitt is the head of social and environmental impact with AllTrails. As most of you probably know, AllTrails is one of the most popular outdoor recreation apps in the world. It's a database of trail descriptions and maps with user reviews and images. The company was started in 2010 and is based in San Francisco. Pitt is joining us from Salt Lake City. And Pitt's going to tell us a little bit more about their AllTrails public lands program. And with that, I will hand things over to Pitt. Thanks
Thanks,
so much for joining
Ryan.
us.
Yeah, appreciate it. I'm gonna pull up my presentation here, and so everybody can see that. Well, I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today, and so good to have an opportunity to talk about this and also answer some questions specific to your areas and your trail visitors and things like that, and also take time to talk about AllTrails and our mission, and help you get a little more familiar with it. So, uh, like Ryan said, my name's Pitt. I live in Salt Lake City, Utah. I was born and raised in northern Utah and Idaho. Spent a lot of time exploring the public lands here, in that area. My role is head of social and environmental impact, for AllTrails. So some of you may ask, like, what does that mean? Right? I didn't even know AllTrails cared about social or environmental impact. Well, essentially what that means is, and we'll get into like what the mission of the impact team and everything else is, but essentially I oversee pretty much any of our relationships with land managers and nonprofits. We give back to nonprofits. We, contribute a percentage of our revenue every year to nonprofits. We support a lot of trail projects and for organizations around the world as well. And then also, again, especially the public lands program, which we're about to dive into here, which really is how do we support land managers and trail organizations in the management of their trails and reaching the public and helping the visitors become stewards of the places that they visit. Um, a little history for me is, I have worked in the outdoor industry my entire career, for the past 25 years. I took a little stint for a while and went into government, and I was the director of the Office of Outdoor Recreation for the state of Utah for a handful of years, specifically through the pandemic era, when outdoor recreation was booming and busy and a lot of things happening. Especially here in Utah, well, I saw lots of growth and a lot of increased usage to outdoor recreation. Well, while I was in that position, I reached out to AllTrails to see if I could buy data off of them to help us with our outdoor recreation plan for the state of Utah. One thing led to another. We started talking with their engineers and with their leadership team about it. They wouldn't sell me the data. AllTrails said, no, we don't sell data, but we want to support you in your efforts and we want to support the trails in Utah in a way. So we have an idea, and that's where we started ideating on what the public lands program could be and what it is. Fast forward a couple of years after starting conversations with them, and I found myself moving over to AllTrails, to head up this program and get the public lands program off the ground. And we've seen a lot of success with it. So again, those roles of kind of community engagement. I also manage our government affairs, so we do a lot of work to support the support of public lands and access to public lands through a lot of organizations, specifically here in Washington, D.C., but also starting to do more of that work internationally as well. So, um, all right.
Hey, Pitt, just before you
Yeah.
go on, we can you're kind of in the presenter mode rather than the where the screen's maximized there. Do you know what I mean? Like we can see the notes on the side there. Could you?
Oh, let me
Uh,
change that. Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Um, is that better?
Yes, it is. Thanks.
Perfect. Yep. Thanks for calling me out on that. So for those of you that aren't familiar with AllTrails, right, it's the app for exploring the outdoors. That's what we call ourselves. That's what we claim, as a business there. What does that look like? Well, most people are using AllTrails to discover trails. This helps people to discover, like Ryan said, especially when he's traveling, maybe seeing another space, you want to find a trail near you, something you can get out for an afternoon. That's what people are using it for. They're using it also for planning. So if I was planning a trip to British Columbia, and the town that I'd be in, I'd start looking right now while I'm home at what I want to do while I'm up there. What trails accessible, what conditions are looking like, all of that. So it really becomes a great resource for helping people to discover that. There was a slide right here that had our numbers of uh, of our users, but I'll tell you anyway. We have 95 million users worldwide. So that would, and over 500,000 routes. So again, this is why it's such a great resource for people looking to discover trails, looking to find it, and then it becomes such a resource to help reach the general public, right? 95 million people worldwide, trails translated into multiple languages, all of that, right? It just becomes a major resource to reach the public with important information about trails. Um, there they are. Sorry, my slide wasn't working. So these numbers, and then again, the other access of it is the details or the amount of data that we have with people using the app to either discover the trail and then also use the app to track themselves so they can hit record, track their mileage, whatever. We have over 3.2 billion miles of logged data, people using it, and so we know where people are going, what they're doing. This is why it is such a great lever for, creating something like the public lands program. What does that look like specifically in Canada? Just to double click in a little bit to your region, right? So over 31,000 routes in Canada. So what we call an AllTrails route or an AllTrails trail page. So this is if you open AllTrails, there's going to be a name, a green line that shows the route and a description. That's what we consider a verified route or an AllTrails route. So 31,000 of these all over Canada. Those trail pages alone generate 75 million page views a year. So 75 million people looking at your trails or looking at those routes. 6 million hours spent on the trail. So these are the people that are using that record button to record their mileage. So this isn't every user, but these are more the heavy users or more the people that are using that to navigate and things like that. So again, a lot of data there. And then what we call user-generated content, or one aspect of user-generated content, over 780,000 user reviews. So again, they went and visited a spot, they went on a trail, and then after they said, all right, this was a 4-star trail, loved it. Or they may have said, this is a 1-star trail, the bugs were terrible, the mud was deep, I lost my dog, like, whatever it is they want to report on. Over 780,000 of these reviews in 2025 on trails in Canada alone. So again, just to put this into perspective of like the the wealth of data that we have from this user base, and I'll show you how we're using that. So what is an AllTrails route? Kind of told you a little bit about this, but you can see on here a map in Idaho, this green line, right? So this is what people use to look at and say, all right, this is the route I want to do. I want to do this big loop around this point. Looks like there's a couple viewpoints or things that I need to look at. But essentially, right, it's a verified trail of some sort, directs visitors to a popular area, gives them the information. There's oftentimes, there always will be a trail description along with this that'll let people know. They can also see data of like, the mileage, the elevation gain, the estimated time to complete it, how strenuous it is, all of that, right? So this just provides people with the easiest snapshot to understand, hopefully understand where they want to go and what they want to visit. Associated with these trail pages as well, again, is a lot of that user-generated content. So the comments, people can see what the conditions were yesterday. I use this often, right? If I'm maybe going to the Alpine or something, I want to see where the snow level is. A lot of times people will put in that, hey, ran into snow at 8,000 feet, blah, blah, blah. Like I understand and I know what to prepare for. Also photos submitted. People will submit photos of trail conditions or the viewpoints or things like that so I can get a better idea of what I'm getting into when I go on that trail. Um, Now, this is kind of talking about um, what sparked the initiation of the public lands program. So, like I said, I was working at the state. I reached out because I wanted some more data to help me in our outdoor recreation plan. And at the same time, AllTrails was realizing, hey, tourism pressure is making proactive stewardship more and more important. So again, from the time of the pandemic, right? A lot more people got outside, and they just went right out and they tried an activity for the first time. Maybe that was mountain biking, maybe that's hiking or trail running or whatever it is. And they were new to it. They didn't necessarily understand all that comes along with that, whether that's safety, whether that's stewardship, whether that's, not to cut a switch back or, to carry out your waste and pick up your garbage and all of that kind of stuff. So as things increase, as things get more popular, it makes this proactive stewardship more important. And that's where, again, at AllTrails, we decided, all right, if we can create something that's of value to the land managers and the people on the ground, the nonprofits and organizations that are typically managing stewardship and communicating that and educating the public on that. If we can give them a platform to reach these people, again, our 95 million users, as well as help in providing data that will help them to make better decisions as well. That's where the whole spark for this public lands program was started. More visitation can be good, right, for local communities, for businesses, and everything else, but also can accelerate wear, confusion, and safety risks. And then land managers, and this is the other thing they played a key part into it, are often asked to do more as visitors increase, or so more visitor education, more stewardship, but also often aren't giving more resources to be able to take to handle all that. That's where a lot of these nonprofits step in to help, as well as many of you work for or participate in. And so there's a fine balance of like, we want to attract people to the outdoors, but we also want to guide them towards responsible recreation and responsible behavior. So this is where the AllTrails Impact Team sparked as part of that, the Public Lands Program. What does that look like? We're driven by our desire to share the outdoors with as many people as possible and do it respectfully and responsibly. So, as an impact team, and my team that works on all of this every day, we kind of have three pillars that we live by when we create programs or when we do things reaching out to communities. Number one priority is protect trails, right? This is protect. When we say protect trails, this is ensuring that they're maintained, that they're taken care of, that access to them is available, making sure that poor behavior doesn't lead to trails being cut off. The other part of that is protect the planet as well, right? So this is the environmental aspect of it, but also as a business and how we work. We're a fully remote business, so people are spread all over the country. And as part of this, it's to minimize, our impact, our climate impact, as well as making sure that we can support organizations with our data and with the efforts and bring people to the outdoors to better educate them about that as well. And then enabling safe access for all, making sure, again, we feel very strongly our company mission and then down to our impact mission is that everybody deserves to get outside and everybody deserves to do it safely and have access and kind of democratize the access to the outdoors as much as possible. So maybe you can't afford to buy an expensive guidebook or maybe, or to hire a guide to take you out for something. Can we provide a resource that can help people to dip their toes into the outdoors and start to get a spark without, without having any barriers to entry there? So powerful tools for better trails, right? This is where the Public Lands Program comes into play. So, like I said, with continued rise in outdoor recreation and gap in needed resources, I can't tell you how many meetings I've sit in, which I know you all have as well, where you see that K graph, right, where visitation is going up and funding and resourcing is going down, right? It's kind of that dreaded sight that we see with our public lands funding, a lot of our national parks, a lot of our state parks, things like that, provincial parks, where we want to make sure that visitation is going up and that we can also provide ways for more resourcing to be available as well. But we realize that that's not always the case. So it's vital that visitors understand the principles of responsible recreation and how to stay safe so that we're not putting more strain on the limited resources that these land managers and nonprofits have access to. So the Public Lands Program is a free resource for trail managers. Um, we started this about 3 years ago, and essentially, it's a free program that any land manager or nonprofit organization, trail advocacy group that works with a land manager can get access to for free completely. There's no contracts, there's no requirements, anything like that. It's just tools that we provide that you can access to do and carry out the mission that you have. This has led to we just crossed 900 partners this last week that are using this all over the world. Majority of them are in North America, handful in Europe, also Australia, New Zealand, and a few other countries around the world. Um, like I said, it's a mix of land management agencies, so even government agencies, anything from a national park down to local land trusts and even local trail advocacy groups, whether that's a Trails Coalition or a Trails Alliance in your community. We have a mix of it, and the program has worked for all of them in a way to provide tools for them to carry out their mission. So, the three goals of the Public Lands Program is to help our partners understand how visitors use the trails, manage the trail information that is reaching the public, and sharing that responsible recreation message, and then connect with AllTrails users to share up-to-date information, regarding safety, um, um, or permitting, or any of that, which we use through our alert system. So these three things, right? Understand, manage, and connect really is that, again, we have this huge audience. We have this huge, 95 million users that we want our platform to be used for good and be a resource to reach that. Every organization is different, and knowing that some of you have a very huge reach, whether that's through email or text or your website traffic, whatever, but we want to just add to that and hopefully open up access to more eyeballs and more people with the message that you want. And that's where the Public Lands Program shines. So, for years, rangers had, this is your quotes from partners that we have using this. Rangers had accurate GPS trail data, but no reliable way to share it beyond emailing files upon request. They didn't have a platform. They didn't have an app. They didn't have somebody on their website being able to build out and keep up with accurate trail information. But now using AllTrails and managing the information that's on AllTrails, they have a platform that they can share with their users to access to get this information and have it in their pocket at all times, right? On their cell phone. So, what does the AllTrails program, Public Lands program, do? Let me walk through a few shots here and try to explain it. Obviously, if you have questions, let's put them in the chat and we can talk more in detail about this. But ultimately, this is what an AllTrails trail page may look like, or sorry, a map page may look like, and this is what the Public Lands program looks like. So let's say this organization just south of Dublin here on this map, it's just a national park there in Ireland. They can visualize what AllTrails routes that are within their park boundaries. So we've set up so they have permission to see all of these routes. They have a list there, which has their length, their names, everything else like that. And then they can see a map view of that. So just a quick way to visualize their trail system, and take a look at that. Well, now as they click into that information, right, they may click on one of those dots or on one of those trails in that list, and they're going to see this route, for example. And what we do is we give them administrative access or their admin access, backend access to be able to update this route or even create a new one if they want. So they can come in here and change any of the information on this trail page, the name, the park that's associated with the route itself. So that red line, if they want to adjust it to do a different loop or maybe do an out and back, they can adjust all of that. They can even change the rules and regulations on it that come with all those tags. So this is a dog-friendly trail. This is accessible by bikes or other wheeled vehicles. This requires you to ford a river or a stream or, something like that, right? All that information that helps the user in kind of discovering these trails and filtering what they want to do, as well as the trail description itself, so they can write a nice trail description as well. So we give access to anybody to edit this information, for the trails that they manage, and keep it updated as it changes, knowing that trails are also, pretty much living and they can change often, whether that's through, construction projects or maybe just a shift in a route or a reroute. You can keep them updated there. And then that goes live on AllTrails and reaches any of those millions of users that are looking at these trails. The other thing that we you can use it for, again, this is kind of the same aspect where the public lands program is used for two things, communication, and then also used for the data and the access to the usage data. Um, but the as another part of the communication, it's keeping informed. So on each trail page, you can create an alert. So it'd be the first thing that people see. So if I typed in a trail name or clicked on one of those pins and pulled up the trail information, the alert is the first thing that people will see. And these are made for temporary information. We don't like alerts to be fully permanent all the time. If that's the case, you can just put it in the trail description. But if there's a closure, maybe construction, or maybe a seasonal, permit required, or parking information during busy times of the year, or just an informational thing. We just added a bunch for a park in New York that they're doing a survey this year, right, on like trail experience, and they wanted to drive people to engage in their survey. So we put an alert up that says, "Hey, if you want to tell us about your experience in the Adirondacks, click the survey link," all that. So these are all things that alerts can be used, show up on the trail page. It's the first thing, and the partners have control over it. These are also really easy to throw up. Maybe, takes a few seconds really to like add it if there's a closure. So if you want to close this trail, whether that's for wildlife sighting, wildfire, construction, anything like that, these alerts, you mark the trail closed, and then you can put a little description like, hey, this trail is closed through the end of July for construction, and let people know. And you can even link out to more information on your website or a park website or something like that if you want as well. So again, just keeping it up to date for people to catch them in that planning stage, right? No one likes to show up to a trail thinking they're going to have a great day, and they show up, and then on the trailhead there's a closed sign, right, or a barrier up that says, "Hey, trail's closed for construction or wildlife," or something like that. Because then they're caught in the position of, well, I need to like pivot and go someplace else. Where do I go? But if you can catch them while they're still at their campground, or maybe at their hotel or at their home, right, they can adjust, and their expectations change a little bit for the day, have the better experience out there. The other thing you can do with this, right, is then getting into that data aspect. So not only are you managing the trail information that's getting out to the public, you're also identifying visitor patterns. So analyzing insights from the activity of these users. So anybody, again, that's navigating on that trail is creating basically a digital footprint that we can share. And this is all anonymized data. We have to, stay in compliance. We're not sharing individual data or anything like that, but anonymized data to help you understand better the traffic patterns and travel patterns of people on your trail systems. So here we provide a heat map you can turn on, look and see where people are going on your trails. Maybe you'll identify a point where most people are turning around on a loop or something like that, and make decisions based off of that. We also provide you access to this data dashboard. So the data dashboard is those insights that you can quickly look at, and this is real-time data. So if I was to look at it, last week versus this week, this data updates automatically, and can really help in better understanding where you need to deploy resources, or focus your time. So what do we share in this data dashboard? You can filter it by time frame or a date, and you can look at, all right, how many trails do you manage on the AllTrails platform, or have access to manage? How many page views those trails are getting? And then you can zoom down into individual trails and see that. How many reviews these trails are getting, as well as the average trail rating and some of that user-generated content. So you can actually use this to look at, what are people saying this week about your trails? What are the common themes going? How many people are visiting? As you scroll down on this data dashboard, we also have anybody that's tracking, so we'll give you a visitor count. The activity type, did they record as a hike, as a bike ride, as a trail run, something like that. And then also we give you a snapshot. Again, it has to be anonymized, but we give you a snapshot of kind of the demo of where people are coming from that are visiting your trails. So basically, we give you the percentage of people visiting that live within 50 miles of that trail, and a percentage of people that are living between 50 and 250, and then maybe people that travel over 250 miles to be there. So you get a better idea of the tourism versus the local usage of a trail. And I'll be the first to admit this isn't perfect data because not everybody is an AllTrails user. But again, we have such a large user base that this is very good for identifying the trends that probably match even the non-AllTrails users. So the visitor count, right? It's not going to be a complete count, but you can easily see, all right, from this June or compared last June compared to this June, we saw this many more AllTrails users, which is a good way to indicate like, yes, there's a percentage of growth on this trail system in 2026 versus 2025. So again, to identify trends, to see that, that's great. And then I know a lot of you actually, collect this data, whether that's with your trail counters or with surveys or things like that. And that's, more the ground truth data for certain time frames. Um, but hopefully you can see the same trend, use that data and use our data and then use that, use those trend lines to match and make some estimates there. Um, so we also wanted to make sure, because we had a lot of partners reach out to us when we were talking to them originally, of saying like, this is great also, but if I'm going to take time to edit all this trail information, and hopefully you have confidence in this, we want you to be sure to be able to share that easily. And so, um, you know, we are always up for people promoting AllTrails, right? That benefits our business. It's good for us as well. And we want to make sure that you have an easy way to do that. So you can use the public lands program to create a QR code, a little sticker that you can put up on a kiosk or your local gear shop or wherever you want to put it, to a trail or to a list of trails, things like that. Put it up, knowing that anybody that scans this QR code is going to go to the trail information that you have edited on the back end and is accurate and what you want the public to read. I will add any of the information that we ask partners to edit or give them the ability to edit is all free information. We would never ask our partners to edit any trail information and then put it behind a paywall with our like premium features or anything like that. So if you if you are editing a trail information or a trail description, it is on the free version of AllTrails, and you can have confidence that that information will be available to the public for free. Again, carrying out that mission is we want to make sure everybody has access, as much access as possible to explore the trails that they choose to explore. So, so that's kind of the trade-off here, right, for all of us. And you're probably wondering, like, why would AllTrails do this, or what's the catch? Because, you know, like this seems weird that a for-profit business is giving away all this information and giving this as a platform for free. There must be a catch to it. But honestly, right, the more users that grow and get out on the trails, the bigger our audience grows potentially for our business and everything else. But also, we don't have a business without the people on the ground doing the work to maintain these trails, to support these trails, and to promote these trails. And so, you know, it's equally as important that we support each other in this. And so, again, by providing data, hopefully it's worthwhile for you, and providing you a communication platform, hopefully it's worthwhile for you. And then in return, we have a trusted platform for many people to use, and invite people to use more trails. We'll never charge for the public lands program. We'll never charge for this data to nonprofit organizations or the land managers themselves. It is there again as a resource to help in the management of this and help to continue to encourage more people to get outside and do it safely. So, just a couple of quotes, right, from partners. Data dashboard highlights areas that may have been off our radar. That's another cool thing about this, whether it's page views or visitors as well. You can easily identify, which you probably already know, but sometimes there's some surprises in there. Like our top 10 trails, what needs the most resourcing? Where do we need additional signage? Where do we maybe need to put a ranger or a volunteer out for on the weekends? Like you can use the data to just help identify that, and maybe it might capture an area that you weren't sure was busy, or maybe is trendy to be more busy, and you can be proactive about it. So I'm going to jump into just a few things here and a few examples, again, of how our data is being used. Not all of this is on the public lands program, but it is using public lands program data. And then people are using third parties like Kepler or their ArcGIS to import data from AllTrails to help them in some visualizations here. Happy to talk more about this or more in depth, and we can have one-on-one conversations if you want to get a meeting with me to talk about some of this. But the reality is, like, we want to reach visitors before they arrive, and it's often more effective. It's often more effective than relying on on-site communication, right? The fingers crossed that somebody reads all the information on a trailhead kiosk or something like that, right? We can reach them earlier and just have another touch point with them. So using data to understand our visitors, right? Again, we talk about this user-generated content, and it gives trail managers detailed trail updates. So like I said, if I go out and I went on a hike this morning and completed a short little trail just to get my legs moving. And when I got done, right, AllTrails will prompt me and say, "Hey, how was your experience today?" Cool. Gave it 5 stars. It was a great trail. It was a little overgrown. I wore shorts. My legs got all scratched up, but like other than that, really great. Okay, great. User submits that. That information is then accessible to all the public lands program managers for their trails. So they can see what it was rated, what the people are saying, and all of that. In the data dashboard, which I can show you here in a minute, they'll be able to then key into keywords there, right? So if they want to see down logs or whatever, they can put that in the search bar and it'll pull up any reviews to say that with the date, where it was happening, all of that. So you can get a better idea of, do we need to send a crew out with some saws this weekend to take care of some down timber or whatever it may be. So new data is available daily. I think this is the key thing, right? We're all used to seeing maybe some reports from last year or 2024, things like that. But this is on the ground, real-time data. And you can have access to do that at any point. At any point you can log in, you can have access to this data. And it's created by individuals submitting information directly to AllTrails, which again, use this in combination with maybe you have a few trail counters out there, or you have volunteers going out and doing surveys on a regular basis, things like that, which is great, but that can get expensive to scale larger. So, think about how you can use that in combination, right? Yep, we got a trail counter on this trail that says 100 people visited this trail this weekend. I have AllTrails data that said 50 people visited that weekend. Then you can kind of expect, all right, 50% of the people in this area may be using AllTrails. How do I use that on other trails that don't have a trail counter or don't have a survey to extrapolate, kind of an estimate of trail usage and things like that? So this is a different way of looking at this, right? These are things you have access to on an AllTrails program. You can say, all right, I want to see all the trails in the area, those loops, everything like that. So you can get a trail system view of all these different loops on the left. And then you can add an overlay to that to say, all right, now show me the heat maps. So yeah, there's trails cutting across the middle of this, but actually, according to the heat map, you're not seeing a lot of traffic there. It's all concentrated into a couple corners here, things like that. Great. I don't know the context of this. If I was on the ground and familiar with the area, maybe I could make some educated decisions out of this. That's your expertise and what hopefully this can do. So maybe you would say, great, we're going to change some of these routes because nobody's going to that middle thing. We're going to update the information. Maybe we need more signage on the ground at these trailheads to help educate people on this. Whatever it is, right? You have a better understanding of that and can use this data to help in those decisions. We've also used this again, like this is again what I was saying, one of those other platforms where we've imported data into it to help with this, but it helps usage patterns to make better decisions by using this kind of monthly data. So what this is looking at is actually like visitation changes in areas. So I think we did like a 3 mile radius and it kind of combined any trailheads within that 3 mile radius and put it into a block. And then it can tell you based off of color and whatever has, trail usage to those trailheads increased, decreased over time. Again, this is a little bit more in depth for your GIS folks and your data folks if you have access to that. But again, just an example of how you can use this data to visualize and better understand visitation patterns. Same thing kind of happening here based on time of day and month, where you can see increase and decrease in visitation, things like that. So again, just using this data to help better understand patterns, make decisions, and advocate for more resourcing at certain times in certain places. So here's an example of saying community feedback surfaces trail issues quickly. So reviews can help really understand what people are seeing and what they're experiencing. So you can see in this, on the side here, like here's all these reviews when we typed in I can't remember what we typed in, but it was tree down, right? And it highlights that. So you can see most, all these reviews. What is it? All right, somebody from May said there is a tree down in this area. Okay, great. Anyway, just super quick way for you to kind of get that community feedback right off the bat. If they submitted a photo, you have access to see that. That was another thing that we've learned from our experience of doing trail work and trail managers as well. Is sometimes people write, yeah, it was good, but the tree was down over it. And then you get up there and it was a little twig that was like, that was easily picked up and moved off the side. That wasn't necessarily a tree down. But if somebody submits a photo, you have a better idea. Yeah, I need the chainsaw for this job. And we're gonna send people out to help with that. Then combining user data for deeper insights into decision making. Really, this is again just examples of how you can use this data dashboard and this data that we provide for different things. Comparative visitation data helps, and put that into context. And then trail managers are alerted to shifts in visitation early. So is an interesting example. Share of hikes by start time in Yosemite, um, 2025 versus 2026. We also had another one that we showed, and I think it's in a case study that we'll go over here in a minute, but I basically showed the opportunity of like people looking at page views, and then we see a spike in visitation 3 weeks later. So actually, if you're monitoring the dashboard and there's a spike in page views, you can count on maybe visitation coming up in the next few weeks or whatever. And you'll start to see those patterns for each individual trail, visitation versus page views, and people, exploring or discovering your trails on the app. Yeah, again, just super, super fun data kind of nerd out things that you can do to help with this. So, strong partnerships work when each side brings different strength to the table. Trail managers bring local context, nonprofits bring these community relationships and volunteer energy and the know-how, and AllTrails can bring, communication channels as well as visitation and behavior data to help in this. And that's really the secret sauce here, right? The government or private or public sector, nonprofit, and then the private world coming together to protect these places that we love so much and help people have the best experience there possible. So I'm going to jump through just a couple of these and then skip it because I've already talked too much and I'll make sure we have some time for questions. But here's an example. We worked with the BLM down in Las Vegas in the Red Rocks area, and what they were looking for is again, the heat map, but then also the average amount of time a visitor was on trail and the average amount of miles they did. So in Red Rocks area, people taking a break from the strip on Vegas to go out and get some nature for a minute. The average time was actually like 2.5 miles is what people would do there. They weren't going on these huge epic hikes. They were kind of just going to stretch the legs, get some fresh air, and also doing, spending less than 3 hours. So what did the BLM do? They use that information to help them to decide, all right, how many parking spaces do we need? It's a very popular area. Do we need bathrooms, resources, water at the trailhead? All of these kind of things can help them with that. And then what signage they may need as well there. And it's just unlocking kind of remote data collection that they didn't have access to in the past unless they put somebody there at the trailhead to take surveys and ask people. But then this also kind of truth for that, right? A lot of people say like, oh, I just come up for an hour, but actually end up spending 2.5 hours. And the AllTrails data would show that. Again, using visitor patterns, we talked about this a little bit, page views versus actual recordings and visitors. So we talked about signs. So sorry, I'm skipping. This was another one where they uh, added 8 new trail segments, and so they put them on AllTrails and used that to promote. And they saw actual, page views go up and recordings go up to their new trails that they wanted people to use and get some popularity. This is the Bay Area Trail Alliance there in the San Francisco Bay Area. And then bigger things like helping statewide plans. So again, this is what initially brought me to AllTrails when I worked for the state of Utah. This is, the state of North Carolina doing the same thing and analyzing popularity of trails in certain areas, where investments have been made, and comparing that and where more investment might be made to help communities that are attracting people for trail usage. We have a lot of case studies up on our website. So if you go to publiclands.alltrails.com, you can see these case studies. I encourage you to dive into them, learn more of partners who are doing this. My last plug, again, goes to our Protect the Trails, but our AllTrails Stewards Fund. I want to get this out there because we only have 10 days left for all of you to take advantage of this. But the AllTrails Stewards Fund was started last year, and we basically created a grant program that you could apply for kind of last mile or last part of a project that you have need some funding for a trail project. We supported 26 projects last year for about $200,000. These are grants at the time from like 7,000 to 15,000, and really helped around trail resiliency, trail experience, trail restoration, all of that kind of stuff. This year, we opened it up in May again, and the applications are open until July 17th. So check it out. If you have a project that has to go to a nonprofit, so you have to be an eligible nonprofit for this. And basically, we upped our amount this year. We were able to give out $500,000, and so our project's going to be from 10,000 to 30,000. The reason we're able to give out more money is because we're a growing company, as well as we brought on Expedia Group, right, a popular tourism company that wanted to also contribute and give back to people getting outside. And so we said, great, do it through our program. We can provide more funding to more projects all over the world. So anybody in the world is eligible for this as long as you're an official nonprofit and trail project. So you can learn more here at AllTrails, publiclands.alltrails.com/stewardsfund. Take a look at that, and we'd love for you to put in an application. Let me add, there's no restriction on that as long as it is for trail projects, things like that. The process is we'll take applications till July 17th. We'll do evaluations through August, and then select the recipients in September and award that money up front. It's not based off of them. There's no match required. There's no receipts required. We will just give you the money up front, and you have a year to finish that project. So again, it's really great for those last mile projects, or wrapping up a larger project that you just need a little bit of additional funding for. And then information about the Public Lands Program. Join, submit your trail details. Again, it's completely free, no strings attached. You can use it as much as you want. If you want to get in there and look at the data once, great. If you want to get in there and be using this daily, great. And really, it's just tools for you to use. No obligation to stick with it or to use it on a regular basis, anything like that. We just want it to be useful and take your feedback on how we can make it better for you. And that is all I have, which I think was plenty. So happy to kind of answer some questions and dive into more details. You can also reach out impact@alltrails.com and set up a meeting with me or any of my team member if you want to talk more individually about your area or your organization. This is what we do all day, and we're happy to chat with you in more detail on that and see how it applies to you as well.
Awesome. Pitt, thank you so much. That was a ton of information. Let's start off with the Q&A here. So if you have any questions, you can pop them in the Q&A function there or in the chat. Either one, I'll keep an eye on both. I've seen a couple folks in registration and elsewhere just kind of commenting on not being able to get on AllTrails as a platform to kind of get into this back end. So in that last slide, it showed you just go to that login and sort of apply. Is there any sort of credentials you need to sort of say, oh, I'm the manager of the X, Y, and Z trail, or how does that work that you sort of vet people or allow them in there?
We do a lot of Googling of your organizations, I think, when you apply. We will, for the most part, if you're a nonprofit organization that works with a land management agency, um, we kind of help to evaluate, all right, who's the best organization to work on this. We also don't have any problem with like crossover. So an example of that is here in Utah, down in the Moab area, right? There's BLM land and there's Forest Service land and there's national parks and then there's also state and county land. And what we decided there is like they had a trail alliance within Grand County and within the Moab area, and they just became the point person to do the work in the public lands program for behalf of the BLM and everything else. And it just worked instead of having 8 organizations in that one region all actively doing it. Maybe there's one point person. That doesn't mean that none of them, the only one has access because we can bring on the county themselves. And then if they want to give the BLM employee a login to access their trails, that's fine. So we kind of leave it up to you locally to kind of, we trust that you have a relationship with the land management agencies or the trail management agencies and to figure out what works best kind of based off of resources. And then also, we come across a lot of groups that are like, all right, we're only focused on the mountain bike trails in this area. There's a whole other organization to do that. That's fine. You can both have access to those trails, but we want to make sure that, again, really, if we just trust that you're working within the community, you will all figure it out internally. Because any changes you make to AllTrails, it's not detrimental. We can always go back and reverse or change them again. It's not heart surgery. It's just some trail information. So, sometimes change happens and we shift a little bit, and that's totally fine.
All right. I see Mike Upton here asking about the way the data is kind of exportable. Is there different formats that you can take that data out if you want to do something else with it?
Yes, and yeah, partially. So that is one kind of caveat of this. We give you access to the data dashboard that currently is not exportable in a CSV file. Doesn't mean we won't export it for you. We just don't give you the button to export it right away for a few reasons. That protects us, and we don't know, we don't want anybody to export that data and then to see a piece come up in the local newspaper or no, local media that's like, look at this AllTrails data and how bad it is for trails. We don't want something like that. So we just want to have a conversation with you of like how you're going to use this trail or this data. So if you want to exportable version of this information or of this data, you can just request it. Once you're a public lands program member, you get a account manager that's assigned to you, and you can always reach out to directly and say, "Can I get some historical data on this and everything else?" And we can export it for you in a few different forms that's usable and things like that. It's all going to be when I say exportable data, that is all the usage data that we export for you. We don't actually share the like trail route data and make that exportable because that's our data that we, run our business off of. And so we don't just share that out. We can for certain situations. Again, if you're doing a trail plan or something like that, as long as we're confident that you're not going to use that to go build your own app and just use all our data to build that own app. So, but again, that's why we just have conversations before that. We've exported plenty of this data for partners across the world to help them better understand that, and then they can use it in the way that they need.
All right. And so that would be like an email to that impact at alltrails.com. Yes.
Yeah, or to your account manager. Once you're on board,
Okay.
you'll have direct. You don't have to go through our customer service. You don't have to go through anything else. You will know how to get a hold of us real easy. So
Awesome. Okay, so now that we kind of know how to get started and some of the capabilities here, I mean, what would you say is the easiest place to start? That lowest hanging fruit for an outdoor recreation organization, a club that wants to do something with this data. Where would you tell them to sort of start?
yeah. So usually like the easiest thing to do is we get you onboarded, right? So get you the permission set up for you to do that. And then you go right in that data dashboard and just look at the top 5 trails. You may be overseeing 100 trails. That's a bit to bite off to say, all right, I'm going to go and start editing 100 trails. But based off of page views, you can look easily at the top five, the top 10, and say, all right, all I'm going to do is focus on these trails for now, because that's what I have the resources to do. And that's totally great. And so whether that's updating trail information on the trail page, or maybe that's just, looking at the data to see what people are saying about those trails and the user generated content, that's totally fine. An example of this in one of our case studies is at Olympic National Park. They have hundreds, thousands of miles of trail. They came on as a partner and they're like, we don't have time to be editing and setting alerts on every trail across thing. But we have these top, I think it was 6 trails that they're like, these are our hot spots. This is where we see the most search and rescues. These are the issues. So they focused on those 6 trails all summer of keeping up-to-date alerts on weather, preparation, safety information, all of that. And every week they were logging in and updating information to catch people in that planning stage. And by the end of the summer, they saw us, using this information as well as putting more rangers on the ground and more signage up at the trail, like combination things. They saw a 60% decrease in search and rescue on those hotspot trails that summer. So again, just like they were able to focus in on that and it became really helpful and useful for their team and their resourcing. Yeah, and we have plenty of people doing that as well. We are just launching as well in the next few weeks what we call Trail Sense, which will hopefully identify that for you automatically. So if we see a string of people complaining about a trail washed out or something like that, and we'll notify you and say, you might want to look at this trail. Like, this is what we're seeing. So again, trying to minimize the resource, and you do have to go dig around in the data, but we can easily say, like, here's your top 3 things you need to work on this week based off of user generated content or shifting change in, trail patterns or usage. And then you can focus on that and minimize how much time you're wasting on that. So we're always thinking and ready for feedback as well on how to improve that. Because again, a lot of trail, if you have hundreds of trails, it's really hard to get started and think where you need to get started.
Um, are there ways that that this can be used to sort of connect with new volunteers, new members, new folks that might be interested in helping out stewardship wise or with your organization?
Yeah, so I think again, you can see this in some case studies as well, but there's a few of these nonprofit organizations that are using this really as promotion. So you can get in there and set an alert on a trail that may be popular and say, hey, there's a trail volunteer day happening in 3 weeks on this trail to learn more and link out to your website or information to sign up for that or whatever it is to bring awareness. So when somebody's looking and discovering a trail, they may say like, oh, cool, I'll come work and or I want to know who's managing or supporting this. So that's one way, just the communication aspect. The other thing is a lot of our public lands program partners, nonprofit partners, we are totally happy to support them in their efforts in promoting this by providing a little bit of a incentive for that. So, we have codes for, the premium version of AllTrails, so people can upgrade. And so a lot of them have been using this like, hey, we'll give you a handful of these like 3 months free premium version of AllTrails. We donate them to you, and then you can use that and say, hey, anybody that comes and volunteers this weekend gets a free version of the upgraded or the premium version of AllTrails. So it's a little incentive for people to volunteer, to fundraise, to donate, whatever it is. We're happy to do that with our public lands partners, and we do that with them all over the world as well, just to give, hopefully a little bit of name recognition and brand recognition of AllTrails is something, a lever you can pull to bring people to support your organization.
Nice. Um, I think that it's always nice. You guys gave out a bunch of free codes at the Outdoor Recreation Conference for everybody that attended there too. So yeah, always nice to get that little bump. You mentioned this a little bit earlier when there's spikes in popularity on trails. That's obviously something that the land managers struggle to sort of react to rather than proactive. You talked about how you saw that correlation before between the sort of page views and a few weeks later seeing the spike on the trails. Can you talk a little bit about ways that land managers and folks that work on these trails and kind of keep an eye on them of how they can anticipate those things and what they can be looking for there to in the dashboard for sort of highlighting those sort of shifts in use?
Yeah, I think the two biggest indicators really are the page view spike. So you can go into that individual trail and see if there's a page view spike, or you can see it for multiple trails, region, or something like that. You can break it down however you want. So page view spike's a good indicator of that. The other indicator of that is for each of these individual trails, we show a trend line of going up, going down, staying flat of the trail review. So again, those like 2 star, 3 star, 4 star, what people are rating them, you'll get an idea. Like all of a sudden, a trail may drop off and start to get bad reviews, and you'll see instantly, right, in the last week why this trail that was getting 5 stars all June, now in July, starting to get 3 and 2 stars. And then you can kind of dive into that and understand that a little bit more. So those are two indicators to see maybe these, you can quickly glance, just log into the dashboard. Those are all available. You can change the dates and filters, but quickly glance and see these trend lines and then dive into the data on the dashboard there to understand that a little bit better. And that just takes 30 seconds, right, to log in and just see those trend lines really easy. The data is really easy to read, and so is the making edits to um, making edits to the trail pages themselves. They're not for, it's not, you don't have to be a GIS expert to like make those changes, and you don't have to be a data expert to look at the data dashboard. If you can use AllTrails as an end user, you can use these tools. So hopefully it's easy enough for you to identify those as well. One other thing that we do is if, a new trail is added, so trails are added to AllTrails in a few different ways. Our team adds them, right? If we hear about a new trail being built, our public lands program partners add them. And then an end user can go do a route and submit it to us and say, hey, I thought this was a great 10-mile route. I'd like to submit it for other people to explore. And then our data team will look at it and see and whatever. If any trail gets added that you didn't add, we will actually send you an email that week and be like, hey, this new trail was submitted. Is it a new trail or a new route that you want on the platform? And you'll have the ability to be like, yay, nay, and we can decide if it's on there or not, and go from there. So again, that's also just another way to like identify trends. All of a sudden, we start to see a lot of submissions come in for new trail routes and popularity growing. You're going to know that area is getting more popular, and you can dive into then like the heat maps and the data to see what it looks like.
Yeah, that's super handy. I know many organizations struggle with road trail building and things like that into places they don't want it. So it's just after one. We're almost out of time. I'll just ask you to wrap up maybe with one final question. Looking ahead, what do you see the relationship between tech platforms like AllTrails and traditional land stewardship? How do you see this evolving over the next few years? And what do folks listening right now need to kind of do or kind of train on to sort of keep up to date with it and remain sort of available to catch up with whatever's going on?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I mean, first off, let me like say that like thank you to all of you for the work that you do on the ground, right? So many of you made volunteers and working for nonprofits and organizations that are like doing the hard work of protecting access and doing that. And as a, again, personal trail user all over the world, like it's I know it's you all that are doing the work, and I'm very grateful for that. As far as the future of this, I know, at least here in the United States, the federal government and National Park Service, things like that, are leaning into platforms like ours a lot more to help them in this data aspect. I suspect it's probably similar in Canada. Knowing that we do have this wealth of data, whether it's us or Onyx or Strava, all these larger platforms that are providing this information. Um, and so they are going to lean into it more. It's going to become more prevalent, that's for sure. Um, so I would say, keep your eyes peeled. And, this is a little bit of a personal plug, but keep your eyes peeled for the companies that have a mission of supporting the work that you're doing in your organization as this continues to become more prevalent. So some organizations are going to look at this and say, oh yeah, we have the data, and look at it as another monetization play, a revenue play. And like I said, that is not what we're trying to do here. This is all about supporting you all in the work that you're doing and things like that. So there'll be players that come in and out of this, trying to take advantage of the data, trying to take advantage of the work that you're doing and everything else. And there's going to be many that are going to come at it at the right angle as well. We won't be the only one. There are going to be a lot of people that'll be here to support and do the good work. And I think that's where the real magic comes. Like I mentioned earlier, the public entities, the private companies and businesses, and then the nonprofit organizations all working together to solve these problems is where the magic happens. And so, like, align yourselves with the organizations that align with your missions, and hopefully we can make a big difference to protect these places.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Pitt, for joining us today and sharing all your knowledge and introducing us to the program. And thank you, everyone that tuned in and asked questions and took part. I really appreciate it. Um, Keep an eye on your inboxes this week for an email with a recording of today's webinar, plus links and other materials. If you're not already on the ORCBC's email list, you can subscribe at orcbc.ca. This is the best way to stay up to date on our upcoming webinars and everything else that we're doing. And finally, please do stick around for that survey. It will load right after I stop talking. With that, I'll say good afternoon to everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. And thanks again to Pitt for joining us today. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.